I thought this was sparkling. That was a disappointment.
Oh, we ran out of sparkling.
I was expecting the sparkles.
I'll get you sparkles next
It's
time.
okay. Okay.
We could throw some glitter in there if you want.
No, I just wanted the sparkles. I wanted the bubbles.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I've been ready.
All right. This is Inside with Outsiders. I'm Jeremy Asgari, and today's guest is Kirra Michel. Hi, Kirra.
Where's my intro?
That is your intro.
That was a lame intro, my friend.
What?
We spoke about this.
Okay.
Okay, no, go.
This is Inside with Outsiders. My name is Jeremy Asgari. Today we have a yogini and meditation, not an expert because you don't like that.
I hate the word expert.
Let me start again. This is Inside with Outsiders. I'm Jeremy Asgari, and today we have Princess Kirra Michel with us.
So much better.
So much
Thank
better?
You. That's correct. Yes.
All right. Oof, I'm glad I got that right.
I mean,
Your
clearly,
accolades.
but princess works too, but
So, who are you? No. All
Just
right.
an easy,
Listen,
mellow transition.
Every one of our podcasts, it's about getting to know the person I'm interviewing. And I know you, and like you said coming up here, I don't know you as well as I probably should, because you made it seem as though I don't know you at all. Even though we've been friends for 5 years.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're going to start from the first question, which is, where are you from?
Australia.
Australia. Okay. But your parents are not Australian, are they?
No. Okay, that's a confusing question. Okay, so my parents are American. My dad's from New York. My mum is from Delaware.
Ooh, exotic Delaware.
Delaware. Yeah. It reminds me of Wayne's World, and they're like showing the different places, like Paris and this place and that place, and then it's Delaware, and it's like a little tumbleweed going. I'm sorry if you're from Delaware. It's great. I love it.
It's all good.
I was actually born in California, so Santa Cruz, and then my dad is an avid surfer. So they moved to Australia when I was 3 months old. So I grew up in Oz.
So he's an avid surfer, but is he like a sponsored surfer or?
No, just obsessed.
So it had nothing to do with any sort of money or job or opportunity, just to go for passion.
No, it was because the surf was amazing out there. So growing up here, surfing in New York, migrating to Florida, and then eventually to Cali. And Cali was beautiful and they love it, but they don't like being around large amounts of people. So they ended up moving to Australia because it was so similar to Cali.
What part of Australia?
East Coast, small town called Byron Bay. Byron Bay, Lennox Head area.
Is that what's the population? You say small town, but I've heard Byron Bay.
I don't know, huh?
I've heard of Byron Bay.
Byron Bay is really, really popular.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of the go-to places. It's different now than it used to be. It used to just be this little hippie town. Both my parents had long blonde hair down to their bums and no shoes and would just surf all day. So it's changed now. It's basically a little Sydney, or it's no longer a hippie town, but it tries to hold on to those hippie vibes.
Do you wish that you ever look back and say, I wish I grew up in New York, or I wish I grew up in California?
No, I love where I grew up. I mean, I was in the water every single day. I was a nipper, which is a junior surf lifesaver. And
what's that mean, like a lifeguard?
Lifeguard,
okay.
Yeah. And it's a big thing in Australia. So every single Sunday we're on the beach. There's hundreds of kids on the beach, and they've got our little surf caps on, and we're swimming or paddling or whatever.
I gotta imagine it's a lot of fun because it's like there's not too much responsibility outside of watching people, right, and making sure they're alive, which is enough responsibility. But like, you're not taking work home, right?
No.
So it's just like.
Well, I never was actually a lifeguard.
You weren't. Okay.
Is it a lifesaver? That just anyway.
Lifeguard, lifesaver is candy.
No, I know, but we call things differently in Australia. Sometimes I forget where I've been here for 10 years, so I don't know what's Aussie and what's
funny?
not.
My friend Mel D. Cole, we had him on the show. He's married to an Aussie woman.
The photographer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I asked him to describe Australia. He's like, man, it's like a bizarro United States.
I remember when I first came to the States, and I was like, oh, this is Australia on drugs. Everything is much bigger. The cars are bigger, the roads are bigger, the portion sizes are bigger. Everything's bigger and just more intense. Byron, Lennox area was amazing to grow up in. It was really sheltered, which, I mean, it's like a double-edged sword. It's really nice to be sheltered. And then at the same time, when you go out into the world, you're like, holy shit, I know nothing about the world.
How were you sheltered? Like, what were you not exposed to?
It was a very white town for most of it. There was like no homelessness. I just didn't see a lot of the suffering, a lot of the it was just very like close knit, small town vibes. Just didn't see I don't know, like city was a whole nother world for me. So
I haven't been to Australia yet. But how diverse? I mean, obviously there's some international cities, right? Some big cities.
Super diverse. Yeah.
But what are
not my town.
What is your town? What was your town like? Like, what would diversity be like in your town? Is there native? Is there no international? Just white folks?
Well, okay. So I remember there was one Asian kid who was William Wong, and his parents owned the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, so Lennox Head, that's all the diversity that I remember there. I mean, that's all I really remember. When I moved to Ballina High, so Ballina is the next town across, and Ballina has more diversity. There's a decent amount of Aboriginal people there, so I started to see a little bit more diversity in high school. But yeah, it was still a little bit separated at the time.
You know, when you were talking about being a lifeguard or lifesaver, whatever you decide to call it, it reminded me when we were in South Africa, Cape Town for New Year's. There's lifeguards, and then there's people on the cliff that are on like these watchtowers for sharks. And I'm not sure if you have that in I know you have sharks there, but I don't know if you have these people in these watchtowers. But it was amazing. We're passing when he goes, look, right there's a guy supposed to watch out for sharks. And I look over and the guy's texting the whole time. So I was like, someone's gonna get bitten.
Yeah. I mean, my town went through, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't been there for 10 years, so it's been a hot minute, but there was a small period of time where there was a lot of shark attacks in my area, which was kind of scary. But growing up in the water every single day.
Do you surf?
I got all my limbs. Yeah.
You have all your limbs. Oh
I still have all my...
Something to be proud of.
Everyone is always like, oh my God, Australia's surfing sharks. Oh my God, why? And I'm like, because it's amazing, and because sharks, it doesn't happen that much.
It's true, but the thought of it is probably scary enough to, even though it doesn't happen that much, it's worth maybe being careful for.
Well, there's a video of a surf competition down in Australia where a guy gets attacked by a shark and he punches the shark in the face.
He punches him.
He's like, all right, get the hell out of here.
I actually think that was South Africa, but it was an Aussie. Who was it? Was it Mick? Anyway.
It happened on TV,
Fanning?
though. That was the
who was it?
amazing
Now
thing.
I need to know. I think it was... I don't know who it was.
Well, yeah, it's not a podcast about him anyway, so it's all good. So you moved to this town next to, how old were you when you moved to this town next door to where you grew up?
12.
Okay. What was life like? When did life kind of take a change for you where it wasn't so much sheltered and, vanilla in the way you describe it?
Vanilla. I didn't say vanilla.
I'm saying vanilla because it sounds pretty vanilla.
The town is amazing. The diversity is vanilla.
Yeah.
I guess. Wait. So when did it take a change?
Because I'm going off of what I know of you, what I see of you, right? So you're saying sheltered and all that, but now I see this beautiful tattooed woman, right? Who's not necessarily what I would describe as being sheltered. So when did life take a change for you? Oh gosh. Oh, that's such a bleh. I guess, so my parents separated when I was 11, and so that's when we ended up moving to Ballina. A few things happened in that time frame for me, which I ended up moving out of home when I was 16 because there was a lot of, home just became a place that wasn't safe for me to be in. Nothing you want to share? No, I'm being honest. You don't have to. But if you want to.
How much do I want to share?
Remember. Stuff that's you're making yourself vulnerable if you share, right?
Yeah.
And if you make yourself vulnerable,
that's a big part about what I do. But continue.
Exactly. If you make yourself vulnerable, you realize you're not the only one that experienced that. There's others who's going to be able to relate, and you're going to maybe help them believe that they're not the only ones out there.
Yes.
So, but at the same time, you can choose what you decide to be vulnerable about.
Yeah. My parents' divorce was a really, really ugly divorce. So it caused a lot of mishap and pain within the family unit.
Of course. I mean, that divorce always does.
Totally. It was yeah. Yep. So, I started to rebel a little bit. My dad and I started to drift apart, and I was both like a mummy's little girl and a daddy's little girl, and it was always like very much so a people pleaser and trying to keep the calm within my family. And
is the mic good? You might just bring the mic close. Okay.
So when the divorce happened, it kind of ripped my world apart. And I kind of went into self-protection, protection of my mum mode. I felt like she needed a lot of extra support and extra care and love at that point in time. And I kind of lost myself in that. And then eventually when she started to feel a little bit better, that's when I started to kind of get into this rebellious stage. I changed high schools as well. I went from primary school to high school. So we have primary school, which is K to 6, and then 7 to 12 is high school. So there was, there was puberty, there was changing schools, there was a divorce, there was like a lot of stuff happening. And then the losing this really intense relationship, like this really close relationship that I had with my dad, it took a big toll on me, and I started to rebel.
What would you do to rebel?
Well, hang on. So I got myself, oh gosh, how deep do I go? And
just
how much do I skim through?
Let it flow.
Yeah. So I ended up moving out of home when I was 16 because it was an unsafe place for me to be, and I needed to protect myself. And so the rebelling was, so I moved out. I ended up renting a room with one of my friends who was a foster kid who had been she'd been to every single foster home in the area, and they just, DOCS, Department of Child Services, didn't really know what to do with her at that point in time. So we ended up living together, renting rooms from a house, and we kind of got into drugs. We got into alcohol. We got into partying. I mean, in Australia, it's 18 to drink.
Pretty much the whole world is, except for the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So by 16, it is really, really young, and it sounds really young, but it was only 2 years off. I'm not like justifying it because I'm like,
I don't think, I think teenagers who end up experimenting with drugs usually are about 14, 15, 16, right?
Yeah. So we got ourselves into, and I'm really, really grateful for my parents. Neither of them are big drinkers.
Right.
So I've got a really like low tolerance of alcohol. Like one drink and I'm like, woo! Actually, that's a lie. One drink, it's a depressant for me. One drink and I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
so,
I'm a suppressant for everybody, not just you.
Yeah, well, other people, it kind of lets them get a little bit loose. And for me, I'm like, no drinking.
Yeah, I guess you skip the social lubricant part and go straight to the downer. Yeah,
zero social lubricant.
So that's probably a good thing. And then you don't like drinking, right?
Yeah.
So
even though I experimented with all this stuff, like I said, my parents taught me to have like a pretty solid head on my shoulders. So I was able to kind of play around with that, flirt with the edges of that without kind of getting myself into anything too serious. But we definitely, I didn't really want to finish school, and in Australia you can leave school in year 10.
So you're talking about high school?
High school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I ended up studying art, photography, drama, and English and maths, and so I was just stuff that I enjoyed pretty much.
It's interesting. You studied the arts because you're obviously creative, but then English and math.
I had to.
Oh, it was a requirement.
No choice.
Understood. I thought you decided to do math.
No, I hate math. Although Australians also say maths. I heard Charlotte says maths. I don't know why. It's
maths.
Maths.
Well, Charlotte's not Australian either, though.
She's British.
Yeah.
And we
Commonwealth thing, probably.
Yeah, I don't know why it's maths. And my mum, being American, would always be like, "Take the S off." I'm like, I don't know where I am. So, so I ended up studying those things, which I actually really enjoyed. So that actually got me to school, but it was still hard. Like I don't recommend this. I would hitchhike all around. I would skip school sometimes, or I'd go surfing instead of going to school, or I would make sure I was there for my
how safe is hitchhiking in Australia?
Is it safe anywhere? It's much safer in a small town.
I mean, to be honest, I've never heard of anyone I know hiking in this area. Hitchhiking in this area.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, I got myself in some weird situations where it's like, I should not be here. And like, I was really, really grateful. Like most of the times when people picked us up, it was like 6 degrees of separation. We knew someone somehow. But I hate to like if I had a child doing the things I was like, no.
So this is from 16 to 18, right? You saying?
Yeah, so I was also like working. I had 2 jobs.
What were you doing? And when was the first tattoo?
Oh my God, okay. 18. I was 18.
18, okay. And what was that, your first tattoo?
It's such an emo tattoo.
What is it?
I'm about to get it removed. It is a little it's a Tim Burton heart. So Tim Burton,
Yeah.
and it's a little heart, and he's got a poem with it, and it's called The Pin Heart Cushion. So it's so emo. It's a little heart, and it's got a bunch of pins in it. So whenever love gets close, the pins stick further in. Yeah.
So emo.
So emo, but I am legit going to get it removed. Wait, okay.
Was that your job? What were you doing for work then?
So I was just working in cafes or a bar and teaching dance as well.
Okay, because you were a dancer as well, right?
Yeah.
What kind of dancer?
Well, my love was rhythmic gymnastics. That's what I grew up like.
Is that when they're like prancing with the thing in the air? And
yes.
That's that?
Jeremy, I'm so proud of you for knowing what it is.
Bams
no
used to
one
do
knows
it. That's
what
how
it is.
Exactly.
Believing the stuff when I say gymnastics, and now that I'm an avid hand balancer, like that's what I do for fun. So everyone just
that's funny. It's one of the
assumes-
questions I ask. What do you do for fun?
Hand balancing.
And you like handstands. Is what
Handstands.
you do.
That's what I do for fun.
Handstands.
I love it. It's my joy.
so much fun.
Do you see?
I have so much fun
So
doing
much
that.
fun.
Yeah. Let me just stand on my hands.
I mean, it's more-
I love how good you are at it, and I love how disciplined you are and committed to doing it. And
You've actually seen me, because when I first started at Chelsea,
Yeah.
I could barely hold a handstand.
so we met at Chelsea Piers at the gym,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing this tattoo girl walk in trying to do handstands all the time. I'm like, okay, and well,
That's
good
my
luck to
thing.
her.
Weirdo.
I didn't say that. I thought it though.
I know you're not wrong. I'm okay with that. I own it.
I was spot on.
Spot on. Correct.
we understand each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time I was 18, I decided I needed to get the hell out of small town. And again, I love Lennox. I love that area. It's like my heart and soul is out there. But I needed to leave. I was running away. I was running away from my family. I was running away from my problems. I've always been a seeker. I always know that there's more out there. And I kind of use the seeking in a way to not make it look like I'm running. But really, I was trying to self-explore, self-discover, get a little bit more, like, understand the world a little bit more and understand myself a little bit more. So, yeah, by the time I was 18, I somehow saved enough money to pick up and leave.
Where'd you go?
I bought an around-the-world trip. So I went to LA.
An around the world trip, you're saying? I feel like the two ethnicities or youth that do that are like Australians and Swedes. They always do an around the world trip.
It was honestly, I had no intention to do an around the world trip, but it was cheap. And I didn't have very much money. Like I said, like I've been financially on my own since I was 16. So it made more sense. It was like let's just say it was like 2.5K return trip to the States and back. And it was like 3K to add in 2 more stops. So it's 3 stops, and that's what makes it around the world. So you do, for me originally, it was supposed to be Australia to the States to Germany, and I was going to do Europe while in Germany, while in that area, and then Thailand, and then back home. I never made it to Thailand. I came back to the States and lived here for another year or so.
Where'd you live?
San Diego.
San Diego. Why'd you choose there?
So my parents are from the States, and Mum has friends in, where is it? Ventura County, Ventura area.
Okay.
So I stayed with a woman out there for a couple of days, and she has a son who was dating a girl, and Vanessa and I were a couple years apart. I was a little bit younger than her, and she was moving down to San Diego. So I met her, and she was like, let's just go and explore San Diego together, and I never left.
Really? What did you do while you were there?
I worked in retail and partied. I lived my college life without ruining my college education because I wasn't in college.
Right. How old were you when you were doing this? You were 19, 20?
18.
18.
So it was funny because like as soon as I turned 18 to be legal to drink and party in Australia, I left Australia. So then I came here.
And you had to wait another
But I was
3 years.
okay because I was with a bunch of college girls. There was 5 girls.
Yeah, girls never have a problem getting alcohol in the United States at that age. Like,
No.
I couldn't because I looked like I was 12. It wasn't happening for me.
Yeah. So again, like I was always the mum. I always made sure everyone got home okay. I never drank that much. Like I said, I've like never blacked out. Like I've never really been all that drunk in my life. I just get tips, I'm like, I'm done.
Right.
But yeah, so
at this point, are you still dancing?
I'd finished dancing.
And you haven't picked up yoga just yet, have you?
Yeah, I hated yoga. Okay, so Byron is hippie central.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is a yoga teacher. I don't know if it still is. It used to be. I feel like it still kind of has that vibe. But everyone was a yoga teacher. Everyone's very spiritual. I hated it. My dad would listen to these.
Wow, it sounds like you hate what you are now. Like you're a yoga instructor. You seem spiritual from what I know about you. But you hated it back then?
I hated it. Well, when it came full circle, right? Like when everyone's like, is that your cue to tell me to pull the mic closer?
No, I'm pulling my mic closer.
Cool. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, when everyone's doing the things, I didn't want anything to do with it. I've always been a little bit of an outsider. I've never, so like how I,
Pun
what I did
intended. There you go.
I've never fully fit in. Like even in school, I was friends with all the different groups of people. I was a surfer, so I was in the water all the time. So I could sit with whatever group I wanted to, but I never wanted to really involve myself in any group. So I'd sit down.
I can so relate to that.
Yeah. I'd have my headphones in. I'd be reading a book because that's what I did. I read a lot. I listened to music. I was obsessed with music, and sit with a bunch of girls. But and they knew that I just wasn't really, I was there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But we'd all skip school, jump in a car and go surfing in the afternoon.
Right. So you did have that sense of belonging, but you didn't want to commit entirely to being in one group, right?
I've always been an outsider. I've just never really felt like I belong fully anywhere. And
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, for myself as well.
Yeah.
But I know that that's not necessarily a good thing.
It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I mean, it could be either or. It depends how you look at it.
Depends what the root of it is,
Well, and the root comes from a lot of my family stuff, like not feeling like I fit in, and then feeling elements of rejection.
Of course.
And abandonment. So it's safer to keep yourself at
yeah.
If I'm not in, I can't be abandoned.
Right.
So that's kind of.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, and then spending a lot of time in the art studio and drawing and painting and. Yeah.
Is that something you still do, drawing and paint?
I don't. So I have this thing called perfectionism. And
have you ever drawn or painted something that's tattooed to you? Never. Why wouldn't you?
I had to think about that for a second. I'm like, do I? No. Because I've got such a harsh perfectionist aspect of my brain. And it's just not good enough, which is why I talk about this so heavily in my classes, is what I talk about in my classes. So I teach yoga and meditation on Peloton, the fitness app. And one of the underlining themes with majority of my classes is self-acceptance and trying to steer away from perfectionism, because it's bullshit, right? There's no such thing, and it's evolving, and failure used to be like death to me. Like that was the scariest thing that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to shift my relationship to quote unquote failure and perfection, and realize wabi sabi, broken, there's beauty in the broken. If everyone is this perfect IKEA model of the
boring.
same thing, it's boring as hell.
Let me ask you now, you say you talk about it a lot in your classes and so on. Have you found that helps you deal with your own stuff?
Totally.
Because I know, they say that if you're feeling down, then you help somebody else who's kind of feeling down. You serve. Yeah, serve. Yeah. You feel better somehow.
Yeah, yoga saved my life.
And you say it saved your life. So relative to this chronological story, right? The story of where you are at 18, 19, 20, and you said you hated the spirituality, yoga stuff. When did that change? And when did you find yourself needing that? Would you consider yourself having hit rock bottom before you found that?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Can I swear?
So, yeah, you can swear you want.
Cool.
When was that? And what took place? Why did you end up...
Okay, so there's multiple, right? I call them Dark Night of the Soul, right? And
Dark Night of the Soul?
Yeah, well, I don't call them. They can be called Dark Night of the Soul.
Have you created that name?
No, definitely not. No,
I've never heard of that before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it's like
Have you heard
anything.
of that, Chris? Okay, I'm making sure I'm not like.
Okay, we need to send you some spiritual books. We got some homework to do. It's like anything, you know. You think about the caterpillar that turns into the butterfly,
Yeah.
and how it has to go through that transition, and what feels like death might actually be your rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think it's really important to, you know, in yoga and meditation and yoga and Buddhism, you know, they speak a lot about non-attachment, you know, trying to not be so attached to specific outcomes and the way that you think it should be, because the way you think it should be may actually be what's not right for you, and what
Right.
you avoid may actually be your liberation,
It's like
your
that's
freedom.
the Chinese farmer story about like a negative. I'm not going to quote it right now because I'm going to mess it up. But basically, something bad happens to him. People say, "I'm sorry to hear that," but that bad thing kind of saves something good, and it kind of and they're like, "Well, that's not necessarily good." And then something bad happens to the good, and then it's a cycle where the good brings the bad brings the good, and it's ever changing. So it's just fluid.
Yeah.
And keeping things fluid. It's kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. So really trying to step into this idea of little deaths, like every single day, like little deaths of concepts, ideas, attachments, which is really hard for someone who has been in control of my life since I was 16. I had an eating disorder as well when I was young. And a lot of that was around how I felt about myself. And also the fact that everything was spiraling out of control. And when you don't have control, you try to like grasp onto anything you do have control over.
And everything spiraling out of control, kind of referring to your parents' divorce. And that's okay.
There was a lot of things that went on. There was a lot of stuff that happened.
It's a tough time. It's a tough age for everybody, right?
It's a really tough age. But then you add in things, just shit that shouldn't happen to kids. And you have to grow up so much faster.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the people I get along with really well, the ones who I understand, have all experienced that. I know, but everyone, me and Chris grew up together.
Yeah.
Everybody who we hung out with had a history like that, where there was some things that they probably shouldn't have experienced at some point, and they did.
Yeah,
and
it builds character.
It does, and it just depends on where you take it. Like, how do you let that affect you, and what you're willing to do, how you're willing to react to that.
Yeah, it's not your responsibility what necessarily happens to you, especially as a kid, but it's your responsibility how you choose to deal with it. And for a long time, I let it harden me, because I had to self-protect. I was alone. I moved to cities alone. I traveled alone. I traveled through India alone, and it was, if I didn't let that harden me, I don't know if I'd be here right now. So there's like, it's a double-edged sword. There's like the hardening got me here.
Right.
But then there's a level of like, the hardening will also destroy your life. Like it destroys yourself.
So where in your life did you see this hardening? When did you realize this hardening was maybe you were getting too detached? And when did that change? And was that actually yoga that helped you kind of find more balance? We were talking to a friend of mine. We interviewed Troy, and in his life story, this woman who he was madly in love with dies unexpectedly, and he was a mess for 5 years.
Yeah.
But he says it. What saved him was yoga.
Oh, interesting. That's beautiful. Okay, so wait, I'm going to go back to a question you said before. Can I?
Mm-hmm. Feel free.
Because I think it all kind of is correlated. So yoga for me, how did it save my life? So Dark Night of the Soul, I've had many of them. And I think it's kind of like, you know how, I talk about trauma a lot right now, but I do think there's like capital T trauma and lowercase trauma, and there's big things and then small things that happen. And I think there's big and small Dark Night of the Souls. So New York was a really hard place for me. I moved here. I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anything about it. I had no intention
When did you move here?
10 years ago.
Okay.
Sandy was my first season here.
Okay.
Oh my God, it was so insane. It was an experience. And again, this was my second round the world trip. I know we're jumping around a lot, but this was my second round the world trip. And again, I was running away. So this time I was running away from architecture. I studied architecture in Sydney. I was a drafts person. I was in the middle of university, college, whatever you guys call it here. And then I deferred and never went back. I bought another round world ticket, traveled through Singapore, India. I didn't travel through Qatar. I spent some time in Qatar and then New York, and then never went home. New York for me was, everyone was like, New York is so hard. It's going to kick you to the ground. Like, it's so hard. I got here and it was just like, New York gave me everything. I got jobs that I didn't want, like decent paying jobs that I was like, no, I just want to work in a coffee shop in Williamsburg. I just want to be around the tattooed people. And they're like, no, this is everything. And I was like, holy shit, this was so easy.
Yeah.
I don't know what everyone's talking about. And then after about a year, I had a boyfriend. I got a boyfriend really fast. And then after about a year, I realized he was cheating on me. And that was the first oh, this is challenging. You know, I hadn't built friends yet. I just spent time with my partner and working a lot. So New York started to kind of eat at me a little bit. And I realized, oh my gosh, I grew up in nature. You know, we grew up in times where we didn't have mobile phones, cell phones connected to us or at all. You know, we had Snake. I love those times. I miss those times. Snake. So whenever I had an issue with my family, I would just go to the beach and sit for an hour or 2 hours. Like, I meditated without knowing I was meditating. Surfing, waiting for the waves between the sets. I was meditating. Being
outdoors and active, nature.
So you come to New York and you're like, there's a million humans and I'm alone.
There's actually a lot more than a million.
Millions. There was an S there. There's just only 1 million.
13 or something like that, 13 million, 12 million, yeah.
In New York City, not even New York State.
Correct.
But yeah.
I mean, it's mostly in New York City anyway, but yeah.
No, well, okay, I remember when I don't know what it is now, but I remember that in New York State, it was almost the same population as Australia as a whole.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? So knowing that there's millions of humans in this city, and I didn't know anyone. Like, I felt so alone, so isolated.
And it feels worse when you're surrounded by people and you're alone. You feel alone. You know,
I remember sitting in Williamsburg at the park one time, McCarran Park, and it was like a weekend, and I was watching people play softball or whatever, baseball, and everyone was just like together, and it was summertime, and it was beautiful, and I'm like, fuck, this sucks. I'm so alone. And then the nature wasn't there.
Bring the mic closer if you don't mind.
I wasn't meditating at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't meditate. I didn't know that I meditated, you know. But my dad had given me a book. My dad kind of grew up, he's a Buddhist. So he gave me, which pissed me off, because when I was a kid with heavy depression, did I mention that? And eating disorders? I needed his support. And he'd be like, just meditate.
Oh, just all he would say?
Just
no
meditate.
Guidance at all. Just go ahead and meditate.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know? So that's one of the reasons why there was a lot of resistance, because I was like, this isn't the answer. Don't try to just throw that at me.
Yeah.
Don't give me your bumper sticker quotes. Be here now, Kirra. Which it's a Ram Dass quote, and I love Ram Dass now. But back then I was like, what the fuck is this? I hate this shit. Full circle. So he had given me a book when I was, 16, and heavily depressed. I was suicidal at the time, and we weren't really talking. And the book was called Dharma Punks for the Americans. Jeremy, the eye roll was real.
that was a real eye roll for sure.
If I say Dharma Punks, people are like, what? Dharma, what? Dharma. People don't understand. Well, no, I'm eating this mic. So I never read the book.
Yeah.
And then when I got to New York, somehow that book came back to me. I don't know how it came back to me, but it came back to me. And it's a tattooed guy, head to toe. His name is Noah Levine. Head to toe tattooed, which tattooed people always make me feel comfortable. like it's the...
What about those with zero tattoos?
Don't make me feel comfortable at all. Because it's like the outcasts, you know? And so I read the book, And it kind of mirrored a lot of my life. This guy's dad was also heavy into, Stephen Levine is his dad's name. He's heavy in the Buddhist world and kind of like pushed Buddhism sort of ish onto his son. And his son rebelled, rejected, was a punk kid. I grew up like, I loved punk music. And so I could kind of relate to him, the rebellious aspect of it. He ended up incarcerated and found meditation during his incarceration. He also had, he was also an addict, and thank goodness that's something that I never ever stumbled into. Thank goodness. And again, I like that's genetics, and it's also my parents, and just having a mind of, I don't know. I'm really grateful I never fell into that. But I was like, oh shit, I could all of a sudden start to relate to Buddhism. It wasn't some dudes, some monks sitting on the hill saying, do this. It was a punk kid with tattoos saying, I found it. Yeah. So I realized that there was a New York sect in Brooklyn. So I started sitting with Dharma Punks, the group here, I would go once or twice a week, 3 times a week, religiously. And I started falling in love with meditation slowly and surely. And it kind of started to save my life. And it wasn't until later on that, so I was really big into fitness in this point of time, and I wanted high intensity. I wanted boxing. I wanted anything that made me sweat, anything that like made me feel like I was alive.
And also get those endorphins, dopamine kicks.
Yeah. And also I wanted it to hurt. I was such a little shit. I'm sorry to my boxing instructors.
Why?
Because they'd be like, do this, do that. And I'm like, this is all you got for me? You're my grandmother could make me work harder than this.
I said that to Gary Stark once at Chelsea Piers. I said it to him once, and he kicked my ass for three, like maybe 2 months after that. Every workout class was like, it was insane. But I wanted it.
Of course. Yeah. And that's what happened. I remember saying that. I'm sorry. But and everyone in the class hated me. But like, I need to feel, I think that the higher you shine, the higher you are, the deeper your shadow is going to be. And I believe that, like, I want to feel everything. So a lot of my workouts they had to be extreme. Everything had to be extreme. So when someone said yoga, I'm like, nah. Did I mention that my dad's also a yoga teacher? I did.
Is he? Was he always?
No, he started doing that.
So, go ahead, sorry.
No, he started doing that when I was probably about, I don't know, in my early teens.
Oh, wow. So right at the time you're kind of getting upset with him, he becomes a yoga. Yeah. Oh, no wonder they totally hated it for a while.
Well, the other reason why I totally hated it, because as a rhythmic gymnast, so it's the ball, the hoop, the clubs, the ribbon. Yeah. It's no strength. It's all flexibility. It's contortion. It's contortion and dance.
That's what you love to do at the gym.
What I love to do at the gym. Yeah. I'm the weirdo at the gym. And so he'd be like, go into dancer's pose. And I'd be like, in dancer's pose, like to the nth extreme, being like, better than everyone else. Yeah. And he'd walk past me and just silently say, like, no one else can hear, you're not doing yoga, and continue to walk past. Like,
oh, wow, look, such a jab from your dad too. Wow.
Yeah. And I wasn't, right? I was all in the ego.
Yeah.
But there's a way to deliver that. There's a way not to deliver that. So I hated it for that as well, because I was like, I can do the physical side. Physical side of yoga is easy. And it's not, right? But because of over a decade of training, rhythmic gymnastics training is intense. Like tears, crying, hot baths, torn muscles, like it's intense. So the yoga postures were quote unquote easy because I'd done the work.
Now, these Dharma punks, how did it change your perspective in New York? Because you obviously thought New York was easy at first, but then reality kicked in, and then you found yourself alone, not happy. How did that change?
Well, Dharma punks gave me a place to go to, but me being me, I'm pretty introvert. So I went for like 2 years without talking to anyone, like 2-3 times a week, wouldn't speak to a soul, would get there kind of last minute and leave pretty fast. And but it just taught me how to sit with myself. And this comes from someone who's like the typical person who's like, I can't sit, my mind won't stop. It keeps
So,
like the monkey
I
mind.
get it, but those 2 years of going and not speaking to anybody, what were you doing for your social interactions? Because we know that's one of the most important things for mental health.
Yeah, we do.
What were you doing?
I mean, I by that time I started to make friends with work, and they're some of my closest friends still.
What was work at the time?
So I worked in hospitality. I worked at a restaurant in the meat packing. I worked for places that just weren't
you?
Weren't me, but they paid well, And I worked for a while at a club in Lower East Side that's no longer there anymore.
What was it called?
Fat Baby.
I knew you were going to say Fat Baby.
Did you know that?
How did I know you were going to say Fat Baby? My friend used to do bookings there, Jenk.
Yes.
Yes.
Jenk has a brother, right?
Volkan. I played college basketball with
Volkan.
Volkan.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
We were teammates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like
and I feel like I've probably met you back then, but didn't know you. Yeah.
Probably. I was the angry girl behind the bar.
The silent angry girl.
I was angry.
What were you angry about?
Because everyone else was high as hell. Everyone else was drunk and high. And I was the only one who was sober.
Sounds familiar.
So exactly. I know, you know that.
Yeah.
And so and it was a...
So how long, you don't have to get in detail about that, but how long were you doing that? When did your life change to what you're doing now? Like first off, what you're doing now, do you feel, we'll get to that in a second. I would say, do you feel like you found your path? But
yes.
When did you find...
Yoga.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I was saying, fitness had to hurt, had to sweat. Otherwise, it wasn't real. I didn't count it. One of my friends had just finished doing her teacher training. She wasn't even a close friend. It was someone who hosted women's circles, and I'd been to a few of her women's circles, and she just knew how to hold space amazingly. So she had just done her yoga cert and was teaching her first ever yoga class. Just put it on Facebook. She's like, hey, I'm teaching my first class. It's in 20 minutes. Or I saw it was like, it's in 20 minutes. And it's around the corner from my house. And I'm like, this teacher, I love her. And I want to support her. I hate yoga, but she's magic. So I literally just lived around the corner. I threw some clothes on, ran down, and took class. And for the first time in my life, I was like, I didn't see it as fitness. Like, I didn't see it as a replacement for fitness. For me, it was, I'd been meditating for 2+ years. So I knew how to start to calm my mind.
Yeah.
And then moving in this beautiful way, this slow and graceful way, which reminded me of dance and rhythmic gymnastics, which I hadn't done for at least a decade by that point in time. And I was like, it was this combination of my two loves, movement and meditation. And I was like, oh, what is this? This is magic.
Right.
And at the end of that class, I literally went up to her and I'm like, how do I do my teacher training? And she's
really?
like, chill, Kirra.
Really? That
chill.
That fast? Okay.
And the funny thing is that I used to teach before Peloton. I used to teach teacher trainings. Your very first yoga class is never, that's like 9.999 times out of 10. It's never a good class. If it was anyone else, I don't know if I would be here doing what I'm doing. It was her and her teaching style and the way that she held space for people in the room. And because, like I said, it's kind of a big thing that she was doing women's circles, hosting circles before, so she knew how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
you were on your path to becoming a teacher from there because of her first class.
Yeah.
And was there while you're taking your courses to becoming a certified yoga instructor, were there any moments where you're like, oh, maybe this is not for me?
No. Yoga was always for me. Once it clicked, it clicked.
Okay.
Was teaching for me? I'm an introvert. I don't like to be in front of people. So
yeah, but how does that work? Because not only are you a great yoga instructor, but you're also
Jeremy's never been to one of my yoga classes, yo.
I don't do
never.
Yoga. I'll get yelled at by my physical therapist if I did yoga. Who you know
he
very well.
He also yells at me.
Yes, exactly. But you say you're introvert, but you're teaching on the biggest platform on earth, Peloton. It's the biggest yoga platform on earth, isn't it?
It's a massive fitness platform.
So for this introvert to now be in front of millions of people.
It's really, really interesting. Well, first of all, after I did my teacher training, I didn't actually want to. I was like, no. I can't. I'm too nervous. I'm too scared.
What changed?
I still get nervous. I'm like nervous right now for doing this.
Question.
Yes.
Do you
Answer, sir.
do people do you actually see the people that you're teaching?
Mm-mm. No. So this is a part of it. That's a part of the answer.
Well, that's for Peloton, but she taught
Well, that's what I mean.
before
like for
Peloton.
Yeah.
So before Peloton, you were
Yeah.
teaching classes, and now if I'm gonna assume the scenario is similar to what I experienced and what Anthony Martini experienced on stage. Yes, I'm an extrovert, but not an extrovert among extroverts.
You're an extrovert introvert.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I'm an extrovert introvert.
Yeah.
Meaning I like being around people, but I have a hard time breaking the ice. Like
I can't break ice.
So I'm not the
terrible.
best at breaking
I'm the
the
most
ice.
awkward person ever. Everyone thinks
But
I'm a bitch.
I bring that up because I also had a conversation with this guy. We interviewed Anthony Martini, and he was a lead singer of a band, and he's the same way. And for me, it's like a switch. When I'm at Outsiders, when I'm talking to 50 people, I just hit a switch. It's like autopilot.
Yeah.
You know, is it kind of like that? Or you're like, I'm assuming the role, I'm just going to do this? Or are you nervous while you're doing it? Because for me, it's almost like an out-of-body experience where I'm seeing myself speaking in front of these people, but I'm not actually doing it.
Yeah.
Same with part of these podcasts.
Yeah. There's an element of flow state that comes into it.
Yeah.
Originally, when I first got started, like I said, I didn't want to start. That same teacher who got me to fall in love with yoga, she one day reached out to me and she's like, I know you have your teacher training cert. I need a teacher to cover for me. I've tried everyone. There's no one else. I know you've never taught. I know that you don't work during the day. Come teach my class. I was like, no. And then I was like, okay. So I didn't want to do it. And I'm sure like it was a studio. It was a wellness center that didn't even promote the studio, right? So there was no one there, maybe like 1 or 2 or 3 people there. But still, I'd never done it before. So the anxiety and like building that was hard. But that studio was a perfect place for me to start that.
And when you got started?
Pardon?
Once you got started in the class, did it start just flowing?
Once I got started, like I could figure out how I used that studio. That studio paid me next to nothing and didn't help promote. So it was great because I didn't have any pressure. So I could figure out how to teach privates. I could because only one person would show up sometimes. I could figure out like how to teach, what works, what doesn't work. I could play around with my playlist, with my sequences. One person would show up, 3 people show up, 5 people show up. So it's like a slow and steady build. And then my classes started to build from there. So it's not like I jumped from 0 to 100. It was a slow and steady build.
And what's interesting is I have a friend of mine who's big into yoga. She was a yoga instructor herself, who used to love going to your classes. Kate.
Oh,
Kate loved your classes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love Kate. She's a great poet. Slow and steady build. And from there, I started teaching at different classes, different studios, I should say. And some of these studios, like one of them held 60 people. And that still scares the shit out of me. If I was to go and teach in front of 60 people right now, I'd be petrified. But on the platform, like I taught this afternoon. I don't know, there's anywhere between like 400 to 1,000 people in class.
Do you see how many people are watching?
Yeah.
Do you have a counter?
I don't look though. I refuse to look.
I wonder why they show people how many are watching. Why do they show the instructors?
It's creating a community. It feels like if...
why do they show you while you're teaching? That's interesting.
Why do they show me while I'm like live, you mean?
Okay, so you probably just see the screen. Gotcha.
I just see the screen. I see how many people that... To answer your question, no, I can't see humans in front of me. Like it's not like a Zoom where I see people.
Does that make it easier for you?
Yeah.
Because I know one of our biggest... our videos with the most viewership was Ileana Papageorgiou, a Greek TV host, a friend of mine. And it has over 400,000 views on Instagram and like 85,000 views on YouTube. If I had to do that interview in front of 400,000 people, it'd be very different.
No, well, and that's the thing. Like, that's only live. Afterwards, like, I've got meditations with like 200,000 views.
Yeah.
Or listens for meditations. I've got, yoga is very present on the app, but we're building it. We're building, the bike and the tread and the other modalities have a lot of, the Peloton is known for the bike, so
Right.
their viewership
No, it's a
is
smart move for them to start growing the other
Yeah.
activities, yoga, meditation, so
Yeah.
on.
But like, so yeah, we'll have 10, 20, 30, 50,000 views for some of our classes. But if I were to stand in front of 66 people or like whatever, I'd be like, okay, Kirra, you can do this.
So
Breathing.
I remember. So you were teaching at a few gyms, a few studios, and you kind of that became your full-time job, right?
Yeah.
You didn't work any other gigs after a while. You were a
Yeah.
full-time yoga instructor.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about doing that for a full-time living prior to Peloton?
I mean, I loved it. It was, I had actually positioned myself at that time. So clean, crisp. I'd positioned myself at that point in time. So I was working I was a vegetarian working at a steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would pay me really well. It would be flexible with my time so I could make money, and then I would hate the job because I'm doing something that's so against all of my Buddhist right livelihood, it went against everything that I believed in. So I stacked my cash, and then I would jump, right? Like if I was in a comfy spot, I wouldn't have wanted to jump. So I had my cash stacked from working at a steakhouse, and I was ready to jump, and I was making like maybe $300 a week at the time.
With yoga.
With yoga.
Yep.
And so I was doing a little bit of personal training at the time as well. And I figured, sink or swim, baby. I can always go back to the restaurants, but I don't want to. And I've got like a pretty stack of cash right now, so I can fall back on that. But that didn't happen. Well, so I was in a really abusive relationship at that time in my life. And so this is why yoga saved me. That was one of the dark nights of the soul. I was, again, in this place where I was heavily depressed again. I was having trouble eating. So when I'm emotional, I can't eat. And it's not by choice. You can put my very favorite food in front of me. Damn it, I just thought of something.
We'll get to that later. Yeah.
And there's zero desire to eat. And I know that I need food for nutrients.
You're force feeding yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced the same thing. We've spoken about that.
Yeah, I think you go one of either direction. You either comfort eat or you can't eat. So wasn't eating, which means your brain isn't working properly. Cognitive ability is out the window. I wasn't sleeping, completely insomnia, which also fucks up your brain even more. Severe anxiety, severe depression, so much was going on, and I was in a really abusive relationship. And so yoga saved me in the sense that was a safe space for me. That was a home base where I could find safety within my body and safety within my heart and my mind. And so my pretty stack of cash was stolen from me when we separated. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm making $300 a week, and that's all I got. I don't have a family financially to fall back on. I don't ask for help. I don't ask for handouts. It's sink or swim.
Right.
And I don't want to go back to the restaurant industry.
So you swam.
I swam. And to your friend's point of the hardest stuff in your life can be the most life-changing in such a good way. I think that I wouldn't be here if my ex hadn't done such a number on me. And I'm not saying I'm innocent in all of that. Like, I take full responsibility of what was mine in that. But there's certain things, like, I wouldn't have fought for jobs the way that I did. I apply for a job, sorry, you're not experienced enough. And I'd respond and say, hey, I'm asking for an interview. I was a dance teacher growing up. I teach personal training. I'm not new to the fitness or movement world. I'm just new to the yoga, teaching yoga. I love this. And I'd go back and forth, and finally they'd be like, fine, come in for the interview, and I'd get the job.
Yeah.
Right? So, I fought for things harder that possibly I wouldn't have fought for. I did more free things in order to be seen, to get the jobs, or I worked harder, I worked longer.
So, how long did it take you to kind of to establish enough financial security to be living off of yoga? How long did you go from making $300 a week to making what you needed to make? And
Well,
then,
I also remember this. I had an Airbnb. Like
yes.
I had a 2
Was that around
bedroom.
the same time?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You were new to yoga then? Ish.
At Chelsea Piers, when I first started Chelsea, I think I'd been I taught yoga for maybe a year and a half by that time.
Oh wow, you were new.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's impressive for you to have started yoga and gotten a gig at Chelsea Piers, which is a reputable gym.
I didn't know what Chelsea Piers was. If I knew what it was, I wouldn't have the job because I would have been shit scared.
Right.
But I had no idea.
But you landed the job.
Yeah.
You obviously qualified for it and you did well there.
Yeah.
To then a few years later, literally it wasn't that long. It's not like there's a 20-year culmination of work. This is a few years later. Now you're on the biggest platform on the world. Like, give yourself credit.
Yeah.
That's a great job.
Thanks.
That's impressive.
Thanks.
Like, I mean, think about it. How many people have been doing yoga for years? And sometimes it's not the experience, right? It's every element of you, right? It's your personality, your wit, your charm, your looks, your ability to take yoga and make it yours and give that yoga to folks, which is probably what they saw in you as well.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you hear my story, it's an accumulation of everything since I was a kid, right? So it's accumulation of dance and gymnastics and meditating and surfing and the hardships, because the thing about my classes is I try to be as vulnerable as possible, which gives someone else a permission slip, as you were saying,
yes,
to be vulnerable, right? Like, to see the way that I got through the really abusive relationship, and it was abusive mentally and emotionally. There was one element of physical abuse in it, and that is when I finally drew the, like, cut it all off. For in abusive relationships, you end up going back and forth. I left him so many times, but fun cyclical abusive relationships. But that was the end. But like an accumulation of all of that. So at that point in time, I actually didn't want to be alive at that point in time. Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing this stuff.
I wasn't suicidal. So when I was young, I was.
You said you weren't suicidal, but you didn't want to be alive?
I didn't want to be alive. But when I was young, it was like, how can I end my life?
Okay, so you're singing in your dark night of the soul, right? And you don't want to be alive, but you don't want to commit the act, right?
Well, I had zero. So I would ride, my bike. I would ride my bike around the city like a maniac.
Therapeutic.
Huh?
So therapeutic.
So therapeutic.
For me, it is.
It is, but I would ride my bike around the city like an insane human. Like, if I get hit by a car, cool. I called her Death Pursuit. That was my bike's name.
Oh my God. Death Pursuit. So what? Okay, well that's.
I was careless. I would do things carelessly, but without any. Yoga saved me. Teaching yoga saved me, because I would be falling apart and I'd have to go in and teach a class, and I'm around the corner crying my eyes out, feeling like a shell of a human. And then I'd have to go and teach. And so I'd walk in and I'd be like, oh, allergies. Oh my gosh. Oh, so bad. My allergies are so bad this season, because it happens so frequently. And then I'd go in and I could step into the role of teacher. Could step into the role of passing on a lineage that's been around for over 5,000 years through me to my students. So I no longer was stuck here and what's happening to me, because a lot of that there was a lot of victim mentality at that point in time. So I was able to get out of my head.
And be present, because you're actually teaching class, you're going through the motions, literally moving.
Yeah, we do breath work, and breath work calms the central nervous system, you know. And because I'm thinking about what I'm doing next, the presence is there. I'm not thinking about like what my brain or what my heart or what my head is telling me or what it's lying to me about. I'm thinking about what's here, what's present in front of me, what can I teach to. And then at the end of my classes, I get people to check in and give yourself this deep level of self-compassion and empathy and forgiveness and grace and like loving yourself up in a way that, when you think about your niece, right? Like exactly the joy. Like when I hear you talk about your niece and your nephew, you're like, it's the same as me. It's like this aliveness comes out. So it's like I get people to think about someone that they just adore and imagine you haven't seen them for a long time, which you hadn't, and I hadn't. You still haven't? I thought you went away.
I was supposed to go next weekend, but he's got like
Damn.
the people in the house. I still can't. I still haven't been. And it's been 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, so imagine going to the airport
Yeah.
and seeing your niece and nephew
Yeah.
and like that feeling that you get when you see them.
Oh, for sure.
And they're running up to you and you give them the biggest hug, right?
Yeah.
That feeling. So I get people to envision that and then allow the person or people, your niece and nephew, same with me, my little brother, to fade out, but keep that sensation, keep that feeling. And now give that to yourself, right? So I'm asking people to give themselves this level of compassion that most people struggle giving. Like, I'm emotional right now because it's hard, you know?
Yeah.
Emotional.
But it's good. It's hard, but you're sharing it, and that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, it's worse if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and that takes training. Like, I still talk about that to this day because the self-critic is real. I'm good.
I was gonna see if you can get a tissue box.
No, I'm good. I can see that look. I
Yeah.
knew that look was tissues, please.
Yeah.
It's practice, right? We practice what we get good at. What we practice, we get good at.
Yeah.
So if you've practiced self-loathing or listening to the thoughts that tell you, like you can't believe your mind. You know,
Right.
your mind doesn't know the full story. The mind has your level of perception. In yoga, it's called a vidya. It's your filter, right? Like, you see the world through your filter. I see
Right.
it through mine. We're both sitting here. We come from different histories, different backgrounds. We're going to leave here and have two different experiences of the same experience, right?
Right.
So the mind has a way of saying, this person, Jeremy, doesn't like me, this is happening, that's happening.
Of course.
So not believing it, and
Yeah.
then, but if we practice that, which we have been, subconsciously, we've been practicing that, most of those negative cyclical thoughts, we have this
It's
thing called,
reprocessing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and negative bias, we remember the negative for survival instincts. We don't have to remember the good. The good doesn't
Yeah.
kill us, the bad
So
can.
So this practice during this bad time, obviously, is repeated practice. You're doing this for a living, so I can see how it saved you.
It saved me.
How long did it take? And once you got on the better path, I mean, honestly, I guess I could probably answer this question: is you're still on this path, right? You're still working on this.
I don't think the path ever
Right, it
ends,
doesn't,
right?
doesn't,
Like, you
yeah.
evolve, you change, you have new hardship, you see things from your perspective changes, maybe the lens, the filter gets a little clearer. You
Yeah.
realize that, you know, everything, like what we were saying before, the things I thought I wanted, there was a point in time where I thought that I wanted to stay with that partner. I'm like, we can make this work.
Right. Yeah.
And that would have been the death of me.
Now, do you think you ever, like, I feel like you are in a better, obviously I know you're in a better place now, right? But before you got this Peloton gig, right? And you had some really big, you wouldn't tell me.
I know. I wouldn't tell you, but I
wouldn't
had
tell
big
me
news.
because you couldn't tell me what it was, but you had big news.
Yeah.
And you were super nervous. But is there a sense of validation that sticks with you now that you've obviously been chosen? Like, you're worthy. You've been told, not just from your friends, from this big company, from the members that watch. Like, but how do you personally feel? Do you feel better? Do you feel like you have that validation in yourself?
I think the worth has to come from outside of your accolades, right? Like, it doesn't matter.
100%. I agree, but I'm saying, like, sometimes
Does it help?
You need to see that yourself to be like, what am I thinking? Like, almost like to check your brain, like as if your brain is a friend of yours saying all of this negative stuff. I'm like,
Definitely. It does. It really, really helps. If I think about it, like, sometimes, you know, my brain tells me that I'm a shit human. It does
everybody's
that quite
brain.
frequently.
Everybody's brain does that.
Exactly. So I'm like, if I'm a shit person, I look at my friends and I'm like, yo, I'm real picky about my friends. The quality of my friends are like top notch. So my friends wouldn't put up with less than, you know? I'm like, okay, so, and then another way that I kind of do that is body dysmorphia. And I still deal with that less now than I ever did before. But, you know, when my brain is saying, oh, you're massive or whatever it is, I look at the size of my clothes and I'm like, you're not massive, right?
No,
Like,
and I'll tell you, you're not massive.
no, I know I'm not.
Yeah. I know you're not. I know you're not, but we're here to tell you the same.
Thank you. But yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that the the tangible things actually do help. So yes, when I look back and I question, oh my God, am I doing a good job? Am I a good teacher? That sucked. I walk out of class, I'm like, that's the worst class I've ever taught.
But that goes to my other, are you getting it from inside, the self-validation, without looking at your exterior
that was your
accolades?
question?
No, that's my next question.
Okay.
Does that help you that now are you getting it more in without having to get the validation from outside?
Yeah. That's a lot of the work, a lot of the quote unquote spiritual work, that I've been doing for, I've been doing the work for a long time. I know that like therapy is something that is kind of important in a lot of people's lives.
It's a necessity, in my opinion.
Exactly. I didn't know if you spoke about that, but
I do. No, I talk about it. I go to therapy. I've been talking about that with whoever it comes up with. Again, because I think it's important to share that, especially as a man.
Totally.
Mental health is hard. The mental health numbers as far as mental health issues are, for men, it's something taboo you're not supposed to speak about. So I think a lot of them are feeling the impact of mental health without being able to freely talk about it, which makes it then worse.
Well, I don't know the specific stats around that.
I saw stats recently, but I don't.
Well, the stats is that women are more open to say that they're depressed. So the stats are that, I think if I remember this correctly, that there's more women who are depressed, but there's more men have a tendency to commit suicide more than women do. And it's usually, in my mind, that's because men don't feel comfortable sharing about depression, So and I love it when men take my classes, and it's not for any other reason other than, like, I remember at Chelsea, like, guys would come take my class, and it wasn't like they'd come up and talk to me after, and they weren't trying to hit on me. It was, they were meeting me like emotionally with their hearts, saying basically that I've given them permission to step into that. Like, and me talking about loving myself like that, the way I love my niece, the way I love my nephew, not speaking to myself, like I would never speak to them the way I speak to myself. So when I'm asking people to love up on yourself like that, that's coming from someone who was revolted. I didn't feel worthy of giving myself that love.
Right.
So it's not coming from like a kumbaya hippie, like yoga, Right. It's coming from, this shit is hard.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about you being the one of the faces of yoga. You're not the kumbaya hippie yoga. You're the girl who's flipping the bird with the tattoos and saying, I'm very self-aware, but I don't have to live up to this cheesy mentality, making people feel like it's you don't have it's too lovey-dovey. Yeah, love yourself for sure, but you don't have to be that the hippie.
Yeah, that's the core essence of, humanity, right? Like, we're taught to dislike ourselves. It's if we don't like ourselves, it does really well for the economy. We buy things to make ourselves feel good. We do all these things.
Big Pharma loves it too.
Big Pharma loves it. So it's such core, like if you take us back, to our ancestors, it wasn't about looks and being seen. It's so much more like the tradition is self-awareness, self-acceptance, not needing to be validated externally.
There's
like
also more tribe and more community.
Community, and that's something, for me, that's definitely coming up massively in my life right now, because as I sit here, I look at everything I've achieved.
Yeah.
And for someone who didn't believe in herself, I have done every single thing that I've ever wanted. I've traveled the world. I've gone to different places. I've felt all the feels. I've played around with plant medicine. I've played around with all these different things. And now I have this job, which I'm so grateful for. And I get to speak in front of 0 humans, but potentially, 100, 200, 100,000 people are watching. And it's like, I have all the stuff. I have all the things that people told me to do. And my heart still feels like it's missing something.
Yeah, but if you look back, it's missing less.
Oh, it's just missing. Oh, no. I'm not saying I'm not grateful. No. You can have both.
Right.
Like I so much of my life, I have a deep gratitude practice in the morning and the evenings, and
I have my gratitude alarm at 8:01 p.m. every day.
I love that. I love that. Gratitude, meditation. I'm in such a good place with trusting the universe and being really, really grateful for what I have, but also realizing, like, I was kind of taught, I was never told this, but the perfectionism comes from my dad and needing to be successful. And, you know, you can kind of bypass stuff. There's a thing called spiritual bypass, and it's easy to bypass feelings and just stick something on top of it, as in everything you have is within. That's all you ever need.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was sort of taught. And I'm like, yes, I have the answers within, but community is also important.
It's about balance. There's not one thing that's going to be the best for you, you know, the savior.
Yeah.
We're going to get into more superficial stuff now, okay? What do you do for fun?
Handstands.
Handstands, that's right.
Oh, wait. I've only done this once. Last week, I went to a place called the Rage Cage. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
No, it's in Brooklyn.
Oh, so where you break stuff.
You break shit.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Oh my God, I highly recommend this. Even if you're not cranky, even if you're not angry, like being given a baseball
They have
bat.
one on 9th Avenue, yeah.
Being given a baseball bat and said, break this, and you're like, or being given a plate, like throw it, and you're like, what? Like, and then once you start, the amount of emotions, my girlfriend and I went, and we just we set intentions. Like, what are we going to, we're like, this is what we do. We always set intentions. And then that intention just like flew through, and I was laughing, and my angry punk music was on, and then I was crying, and then like, oh my God, the liberation afterwards. I'm like, I feel so good.
Yeah.
It's better than therapy.
So you like breaking stuff for fun.
I love breaking shit.
What are your goals and dreams? Like, what's your goal? Yeah. What do you see yourself like? If you see yourself 20 years from now.
Oh gosh, that's a long time. Let's do shorter. I love what I have the capacity to do right now, which is connecting with people, making people feel seen, allowing people to feel the feels and not bypass anything. And I want to continue down that path. Who knows, maybe one day this is so funny to say this, but like talks, you know, in front of humans.
Yeah.
You know, there was a book that I was saying, it saved my life after I separated from my ex, the abusive ex. And maybe write a book. Maybe, you know, you said it earlier. Like, I know, like, I don't regret anything that I've been through, because if I can share it and I can affect one person in the most minute way, to give that one person who wrote that book saved my life, you know?
Yeah.
So writing books, giving talks, learning more about yoga, being able to use this modality, this way of life as a tool to continue this on, to share this.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that you've already started that with Peloton.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of Outsiders? You've been to a bunch of our events.
Getting out, well, it was a few things. Getting outside in nature is always good for the soul, and doesn't happen enough in New York for me.
Right.
And then, as much as I'm an introvert, even just being around people, even though I'm not the one who's breaking the ice typically.
We break the ice for those who have a hard time doing that, which is one of the we don't really advertise that.
Yeah.
Well, we actually kind of do it. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do love about Outsiders is that sometimes, you know, we've been in groups of people and people are there alone. You know, I'm going with a friend or two and someone else is going there alone, and we all end up mates by the end of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chosen family is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
What is your most embarrassing moment?
In life?
Yes, in life.
God, do you know I'm really bad at quickfire questions?
We haven't even gotten there yet.
I might just walk out. I hate quickfire questions.
This is not quickfire.
It is quick. I mean, no. What's this?
Rapid fire.
Yeah, no, but just questions like this. My most embarrassing moment. Can I pass? I have to think about things. That's not the way my brain works.
Nothing comes to mind.
I mean, I've had plenty of embarrassing moments. I just can't think of any of them right now. My brain doesn't work like this. Tell me I'm not the only one whose brain doesn't work like on the spot.
There's been a few.
There's some people who are so good at it.
There's some people who have like a moment in their life, an event that happened that were like makes them cringe every time you think about it.
There's so many. Like most of my moments are cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Just in my brain though. Outside they're not cringeworthy. People don't think they are, and in my brain I'm like, help me, get me out of here.
No, I mean some of these people's embarrassing stories are very cringeworthy that we've heard. Like very.
Now I want to hear them.
Which one was the last one we heard? Mike, what did he say? Oh, yes, he was 9 years old. Was he 9 or? Yes. 9. Had to use the bathroom. Teacher wouldn't let him go at first, so eventually he bolts because he has to. Doesn't make it to the bathroom, and he's
kid.
like, leaves the whole trail of number 2 in the hallway.
Aww.
Yeah, and then he has to
Yo, that's traumatizing.
Yes, and then as he's running to the bathroom and not making it, the entire class is walking towards him and down the hallway. So.
Oh, my heart hurts for him.
And the other one that one was bad, but it wasn't funny.
It's
it was
not.
sad.
That's not funny. That's just sad.
Ken
That's
Tanaka's was
traumatizing.
funny, and Ken Tanaka he ran the marathon with food poisoning.
Oh my god!
And it took him 8 hours and 27 shits later.
Yo, this is a side note. I have a friend who just ran 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents.
David Kilgore.
No, this is a different friend.
My friend was
just recently, just 2 days ago.
Yes, but my friend is the one that won every single one.
He won
every single race. He won. David Kilgore ran 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents and won every single one.
Yo, my friends, I hate running. I don't know how y'all do it.
I told him I have a hard time running down the block.
I prefer to do a handstand for a
we should do
marathon.
7 handstands on 7 continents in 7 days.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that out loud. I told Mariana Fernandez, one of the other instructors, she's really big into running. I told her I'd run a mile with her.
Oh, you can do a mile.
I can do a mile, right?
All right, so we're going to skip this the most embarrassing moment. You don't have one that sticks out?
I've got so many. I just don't know any in my brain right now. I don't have any. I don't know. This is it.
This is it? This is your most embarrassing moment?
No.
Life is good.
Life is real good.
All right. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share about yourself?
I don't know. No.
All right, good talk.
No. Hey, is there anything I don't even...
And if there's no, there's no. That means I've done a great job.
What do we... Well, don't give yourself that much credit. Oh, crap. I'm sure as soon as I go home or get in the car, I'll be like, damn it, why didn't I say this? But whatever, I'm fine.
Okay, sounds good. So the last part of this interview is 5 rapid fire questions.
Oh, shit. This is where I leave.
Are you ready?
No, I'm not ready.
Okay, cool. Favorite city other than New York City?
It doesn't have to be a city.
This is
I'm
going
not
to be
good
painful.
At
This is going to be so painful. First thing that comes to mind.
Does it have to be
Place.
San Diego?
San Diego. Okay, she gave us an answer. Congratulations. If you could do any other profession, what would you do?
A circus performer.
A circus performer?
Yeah.
Doing handstands?
Like an acrobat, yeah.
Okay, I can see that.
Or a rhythmic gymnast, but that time has passed.
All right. What's your vice? I can answer that for you.
What?
Isn't it like ice cream or cookies or something?
No, I do love my sweets. My vice is... Does a vice have to be bad?
I mean, it could be just something that you probably can't stop yourself from doing because you love it so much.
Either in a good way or a bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a good one and a bad one.
Typically it's bad, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I got a good one and a bad one. And it's stupid Instagram.
Instagram is a vice.
I hate it.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
That's how I avoid my feelings, my friends, is I go into Instagram and avoid my feelings. And then my good vice is I know I have to meditate. I have to meditate and I have to speak to the universe. I have to divine trust.
Those are 2 great answers. The Instagram one I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah. And the other one was it became a vice because over a long period of time, like the gratitude practices, it's realizing that there's so much bigger. It's.
I guess when I do ask vice, it's more about something that's negative, right? But anyway, those are both good answers.
Thank you.
What's your greatest fear?
Heights. And being in front of large amounts of people and doing podcasts.
Wait, how would you want to be an acrobat if you're afraid of heights?
Yeah, I know, right?
Wait, what?
How would you want to be an acrobat if you're afraid of heights? Don't you got to be up in the air?
Because I'm also afraid of podcasts, but I'm doing this, aren't I? I'm also afraid of speaking in front of humans, but I do that, don't I? Just because I'm afraid of it doesn't mean I don't do it.
But you do it so well, you don't seem like you're afraid of it at all.
If you're in my central nervous system right now, there's so many times, I'm like sweating. I've been like, I shake a little bit, and I've been like, there's this thing, it's Satanama. And I've been doing this like the entire time.
Have you?
And breathing really deep. And whenever I do it, it calms everything down.
Yeah.
Satanama.
Is there ever
That's my
anything that
vice.
you're not anxious about or
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of things I'm not anxious or nervous
Why'd you give that little
about.
giggle?
Because there was nothing. I was like, what is it? There's no, when there's no crowd and I'm with my people, with my good friends, and I don't know, when I'm flowing, when I'm doing yoga, when I'm in flow state with yoga asana. So asana is a physical practice of yoga. There's plenty of times where I'm not anxious, but I do have an anxious mentality. It's so much fun. But yoga and meditation and breath work really helps.
But I feel like some of your anxious feelings make you entertaining.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, this is fun. Yeah, you see, like you're a weirdo, and it's funny.
Yeah, you should see me in a photo shoot. Oh, it's just awkward. It's awkward for the first little bit until I start to get comfortable, and that's the way I am just in general.
I
Like
think it makes you human. Honestly, I think everyone feels this way. You just vocalize it.
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting. Like if I'm like at a party or something, I've got one of my girls, Mariana, again. We have this thing. We just text. I'll meet you by the cheese. Wherever the food is, that's where we are. We're going to be antisocial, sitting by the food, eating. And she knows to come and save me. She's really social, but she just knows that she has to come and save me. Like I'll be in the corner with the dog, like just playing with the dog or eating the food. And I can do it. I can handle it, but my insides are like, I don't want to do this. And like I would just go to the bathroom and stand in front of the mirror and be like, you can do this. You can do this. And then I find the other antisocial person at it and we hang.
And just sit there awkwardly, quietly.
No, we just talk about how uncomfortable we are.
And then that's a connection. Then you become comfortable.
Made a connection.
Weird, right?
I love it.
Speaking of food, last question. What's your favorite food? And what'd you bring today?
I hate this question.
You hate this question?
Yeah.
This is the only question I told you about.
I know. This is the only question you told me about. And this is, you know what, when I thought about I'm not good at rapid fire, am I?
You're absolutely terrible.
I told you. Did I not warn you?
No, you're not that bad.
Okay, my favorite food. I really like sweets. I really like Thai food. I really like pancakes. I wanted to bring pancakes, but like I don't like old pancakes. I'm really weird with food, okay? I have a weird relationship with food.
I agree. I don't think takeaway pancakes are the best.
No. But okay, so if you ever go to 5 Leaves in Greenpoint, the best pancakes ever.
What is it? 5 what?
5 Leaves.
5 Leaves? Okay.
Yeah, it's an Aussie spot. Or Ruby's Aussie spot, best pancakes. The best brunch places in the city are all Aussie. You heard it here.
Well, New Yorkers don't do brunch, so it makes sense.
They do, and it's terrible and greasy.
Locals don't do brunch.
Yeah, sure. But the brunch that you get in New York is shit.
Because locals don't eat it.
It's like
for implants.
heavy, greasy.
Guys, here you go. You want brunch? Enjoy. Knock yourselves out. Anyway, what'd you bring? You brought brunch? She brought brunch. Let's see what you brought.
My mom sent these to me. Actually, she sent them to me.
Was it like Vegemite?
Damn it, I should have brought you Vegemite. This is gold.
What is that?
This is gold, but we needed a cup of tea.
You can pretend like this is tea.
A cup of tea, that's
Mint. Oh, I think we have that here. It's.
Your mint slices suck. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
this is
I'm
like the
opinionated.
Yes.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew. I mean, I'm
Actually,
sorry.
I'm not a
I'm
fan.
sorry. Girl Scout
I'm not
cookies.
a fan of chocolate and mint.
Good. None for you.
So far she insulted Delaware and Girl Scouts.
I'm not doing well, am I?
So is this? Let's talk about this though. This is
No, I
a
love
nostalgic thing for you.
Girl Scouts. I just don't love the chocolate mint slice
No,
cookies.
we're just giving you a hard time. Girl Scout
No,
cookies, I'm not a fan of either,
I
but I
need
buy
to-
like 15, 16 boxes
Because,
a year
yeah.
for my goddaughter.
Yeah, good.
Good. Good. What's the story behind mint slice? And this is an Aussie thing, right?
Well, we call them biscuits in Australia, not cookies. And everyone's really big on Tim Tams in Australia. Have you heard of Tim Tams?
No.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay.
Jeremy. Disappointing.
I've never been to Australia.
That's okay. Have you? No. Thank you.
I'm not as knowledgeable
It's massive.
about Tim
So
Tams
everyone is
either.
really big on Tim Tams.
What is it? Is it a biscuit?
It's a biscuit. It's a
Okay.
bicky. It's a chocky bicky.
A chalky bicky.
A chocky bicky.
Oh, that's such a weird place.
We need a cup of tea. We need to have a cuppa for our chocky bickies to dip the chocky bickies in.
A cup to dip the chucky bickies.
We need a cuppa, which we don't have.
Gotcha. Yeah.
If you were Australian, you would have a cuppa. You would have tea here with milk and sugar.
Milk and sugar in the tea?
Yeah, milk and sugar in the tea.
I'm Persian, and that's sacrilege.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. We do things differently, you know.
I mean, sugar, yes, but we don't put milk in our tea.
No.
Yeah.
I sometimes people ask me if I want any tea with that milk. That's the ratio.
Oh, really?
For me. I like a lot of milk in the tea. This is just great. I don't know. It's just my go-to.
Is that something you had as a kid?
We weren't allowed to eat bad food. Bad food. So this would be like a special treat. I don't ever remember, and maybe that's why I like it so much.
Because it was the forbidden.
We weren't allowed to. We weren't allowed to have. I was going to say cordial. You guys don't know what cordial is. It's like grenadine.
Oh yeah.
Cordial is really big in Australia. So we had to drink water and we had to have brown bread, and now that's how I eat. Everything's full circle.
Yeah.
Everything that I resisted, I came right back to, except for this. Although my dad does have a big sweet tooth, so we weren't allowed to, but every now and again we would.
Gotcha.
So you don't want one?
No, I don't like mint, and plus let me see this. I didn't get. We haven't. I'm supposed to.
Wait,
go ahead.
how are you Persian and you don't like mint?
Mint and chocolate.
Oh.
He's so
And that's
mint and
Moroccan,
chocolate. So defensive.
Mint tea is Moroccan, not Persian.
I do love Moroccan mint tea.
Yeah.
Like, can we not look at the ingredients?
I'm looking at
All
it.
right, so now I need to get tea for this place.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to buy cups. You're going to need to buy tea.
I can't eat this, but I actually.
Oh, that's right. You can't eat anything. I do like your cup. You are an amazing woman. You are an amazing.
Chris kissed me. You are an amazing woman. I appreciate that.
You are.
Don't assume my gender, Chris. Anyway, this has been. I feel like we could go on for like 5 hours with you.
Yeah. Can we stop talking about me now? I'm done.
I'm not. Listen, I told people we're not interviewing me until we reach episode 100. So.
Jeremy, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So it's been nice having you on the show. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you come back at some point. And anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Come say hi on social media at Kirra Michel. If you are interested in yoga or meditation, get the app. There's an app. You don't have to have a bike or a treadmill to do yoga and meditation.
And the app is the Peloton app?
One Peloton.
One Peloton.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's access to, I'm not trying to pitch this, but this is where I am right now, pitching this.
Nothing wrong with pitching.
You have access to not only meditation, not only yoga, and there's different yoga teachers. So yoga is such a big, big umbrella. Like if you've gone to one yoga class and hated it, try a different teacher, try a different style of yoga. Right, so not only that, but then if you get the monthly subscription, you also have strength, boxing, Pilates, bar classes. There's so much outdoor running, outdoor walking, like phenomenal teachers. I work with amazing human beings who are very inspiring. So get yourself into a little bit of health and fitness.
I agree. I think it's amazing, especially not just for physical, but for mental.
That's all
if
of
they
it.
have any questions, can they reach out to you directly on Instagram?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll try.
No, our millions of viewers, are going to bombard you. Okay.
No, they'll have like 2 people and just say I don't know. Anyway, I'll try.
All right. Perfect.
That's all.
Well, thank you again.
Thank
I got
you.
to know a little bit more about you.
You did.
You still seem a little mysterious to me, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to continue to eye roll you.
But it's been nice to hear more of your story, and I appreciate you sharing some of the things you shared. I know it makes it a little hard sometimes to be vulnerable, but
It's okay.
I think others out there will appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.